after the Flamet Dalit Amid Aleph. Yeah, good. And we'll begin on Gimel Beis, and we're discussing here the Eden, they're crossing the Yarden and we're splitting the Yarden. Says the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom. Actually, the very bottom line. These are the 3 places that the Kohanim actually carried the Aron, but generally speaking, the Levim carried the Aron, or it could have been according to some of the Levim, or the Kohanim, and these 3 instances specifically only the Kohanim. So as you want on top of the page. The Kivan Shenitbu Ragle Kohanim b'mayim, as soon as the Kohanim placed their feet in the water in the Yarden, Chazru Hamayim Lacharem, the water receded, and it formed one large wall. Because the flow of the river was only going in one direction, all they needed was to stop the water from one side, prevent the water from flowing, and that became like a nade, barrel, and it stopped, and then the Eden were able to cross. Taisus and Lamadal and Bay says that the width of the Yarden was 50 amas. He doesn't bring a makkah for it, but they say the makkah for it is that Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Abish to go into Yisrael, and it says in the Medrash he did not even allow him to go the length of a rope of 50 amas, which would have allowed him to cross the Yarden. However, others say, as the pasuk says, this happened during the spring season when it was full of rain. So how do you know then it was also 50 amas wide? Maybe it was much wider. But anyway, but I guess if the eyes from Moshe Rabbeinu, that also was in the season when it rained, and yet the width of the Yarden was only 50 amas. Anyhow, as soon as they placed their feet into the water stopped. It says, as it says in pasuk, when they entered the Yarden, and so on and so forth. And as soon as they put the feet in there, the water stopped. Then and the water stopped. The water was coming down. Komun neid echad, that it stood upright. Now the how high was this water? The water was 12 mil high. Keneged machane Yisrael, you really hold that the Yidden, there was 12 camp of 12 mil by 12 mil, and they all walked into the yard in the same way. And the way Rashi learned to take it literally, walked in 12 mil by 12 mil. Places brings that maybe they entered the water 12 mil, but then they went single file, they shuffled single file. But nevertheless, Pasha, they walked 12 mil by 12 mil. Therefore, the water had to wait till the entire 12 mil can cross the thing. So the water piled up 12 mil while the Eden walked 12 mil. In other words, we're assuming that the time, the duration it took the people to walk 12 mil to come across is the time that much water, 12 mil worth of water would have flowed across, and therefore they built this wall up there. That's what Rita says. I don't understand. Water flows a lot quicker than what people walk across. You're going to tell me that what's quicker, people walking or water flowing? Water flowing. So if you held up the water enough time for the people to cross, 12 mil of people to cross, you would need to be a lot more water than the height of 12 mil. It came by in mind because you tell me as soon as they reached 12 mil, the water started flowing again. It would have drowned them all. Actually, in the pasuk there it says that they sort of walked quickly through. But if you walk quickly through, we're going to have more later. That in fact is the argument. But nevertheless, he said it can be. Ella the water kept on piling up. It didn't just reach 12 mil and then start flowing again. The water kept on piling up, keeping wave on top wave. Yes, and misholish mil. It ended up accumulating the height of 300 mil in order to allow all the Eden to cross through dry. Now we had the traces in a few places and Rashi Rashbam in a few places that certain numbers in Shas are Lashon Guzman. We had 60, for example. We had faced it a few times, 60 Guzman, and we also had 300. We had a Gemara in Psachim that this Kohen Gadol used to eat 300 chickens for dessert, and so on. So it's like a Lashon Guzman. But over here, there's a Machlek Lashon Guzman who actually was 300 kilometers high. 300 kilometers high would be quite high. The whole world was able to, the entire civilized world at that time was able to see the water. If it's 300 mil high, they can see it. It says, when all the kings of Almighty heard, what happened when they crossed the Yam, he dried the Yard of Eden, had over to the cross, they all melted away. So they no longer had the fighting spirit against Eden. And so what do we see from here? What do you mean they heard? They heard because they saw. They said to Yeshua, we heard. So they heard. And what's the right? And there Rashi brings that all the waters in the world split. They came over to Bilam and said, what's going on there? All the waters split. So when even though she said she heard, it meant that she saw. So maybe over here also, when it said that they heard about the splitting of the yard, they actually also saw it. Why? Because the water, the monument, was 300 mil high. So everybody was able to spot it. See, it says, we all heard that we melted, our hearts melted. Like, come on, we can no longer stand up to eat. Something in my further, it says in the pasuk, they were standing in the yard. Yeshua said to them, you should know, I want you to know, while they were standing, they even paused. So not only, so that's even more difficult of you, that you the whole, as soon as they hit 12 wheel, started to flow again. It wasn't just a crossing of the Eden, they had to pause because Yeshua made a drasha. And the drasha was as follows. You should know you're crossing the yard now. There's a condition involved. The stipulation is you're going to chase away all those people who are dwelling there right now. It says, like you're going to chase away all those who live in the land. Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eden, you do that fine. But the water will come and flow and destroy all of you. What kind of strange word is oisechem? He said the word is oisiva eschem. That means Yeshua is also responsible. The leader is responsible for the inactivity of the people, even though Yeshua himself, might not be on the front. Or how can you hold him responsible for this? And nevertheless, as a leader, it's your duty to make sure that everyone carries out, discharges their duties properly. If not, oisiva eschem. Do we understand the Yarden? Omlan Yeshua. So Yeshua said, Yeshua then said, this is your task. He chose 12 people and he said to them, I want each one of you 12 people, one from each Shevet. I want you to lift one of the stones, according to the numbers of Shvatim 12, and they uksiv. And it says that I want, so they built a few monuments. One monument near the yard, so people could or in the yard, so people know that this happened in the yard. They crossed the Yam. And the other one we learned last time that they built a mizbech from, they put plaster on it, and then they wrote the Sefer Torah and different things. And then they dismantled it and rebuilt it in Gilgal. Because the first Mishkan, while the Eden were fighting for 14 years, the first Mishkan, the 7 years of conquest and 7 years of splitting the land, the first 14 years, the Mishkan was in Gilgal. And they built the mizbech out of those 12 stones they took out. So there were 2 sets of 12 stones. There should be a sign. If your kids will ask you tomorrow, what is going on? Yeah, you'll tell them. Similar this will be a sign for the future that your ancestors crossed the Yarden. The wild of the Yarden, Yeshua. Yeshua then said to them, he said, I want you to lift here from the yard, and from where the kohanim were actually standing firm in the ground. And take another 12 stones. So there's one set of 12 stones you left in the yard, and the other one take with you, and take them with you, carry them and place them in the hotel where you're staying. Yeah, that you're going to stay there, reside tonight. What if that's tonight? Because as they're traveling and going to Yichud, every night they spend somewhere to stay over. I would have thought every place where the Eden rested at night, they should build another one of these, monuments. Only the first night. Everyone says Rabbi Yossi. Abba Chalafta, the son of Abba Chalafta, Rabbi Lezer ben Masya, and Chananya ben Chachanoi. We stood next to those stones. They found those stones. The Shirum Kolachal V'Achas, we went ahead and we measured each one. Shkula, they all weighed Ka'aboyim Sa. Not sure that unfortunately I have a question whether it's volume or weight. Whatever it is, it's big and very heavy. So 40 saw is the amount of water you just work out in the mikveh of 3 amas by 1 amma. You try to lift that kind of water. It's very, very difficult, and it would be a few hundred pounds, which means that the Eden were very strong, and yet they were scared of the people living in Eretz Yisrael, as we will soon see the story in Meraglim. Immediately we have a tradition. The tu'una, a pekel, the madli inish lekaspa. If you want to lift something from the ground and put it on your shoulder, is tilsa is a third. The tu'una have if somebody would come and put it on your place on your shoulder. So I place on your shoulder, you can carry far heavier weights, but actually a third. And then other place it says that from lift to the ground to the knee is one amount, from the knee to your shoulder is another amount, or take from the ground directly to your shoulder, you can do more. and then somebody else places on your shoulders even more. So a third. So if they were able to pick up 40 saw from the ground, if you were placed on your shoulder, you could pick up 120 saw. You're talking about, like, I don't know, 600, 700, 800 pounds on your. So these are very, very strong people. This gives you a little bit of an insight. If you want to look at the grapes that the Meraglim brought into back to the Eden from Etzro. What's the same pasuk? It says the pasuk that they cut off some of a cluster of grapes, and they carried by Yisrael Bamait. They carried on this pole. Bishnayim. What do you mean two? What do you mean two? Once you tell me there's a pole, obviously you need two people because the pole is long. How can one person carry a pole? So it must be two people. Two people. Why is there Bishnayim? To tell you that there were two poles. There were two poles. Two poles. So that's four people. Omar Rabbi came along and said, now the Gemara does not bring a mocker. Where did he get from? It was actually two sets of two poles. So because they were meraglim, right? There were two sets of two. There were 8 people involved in carrying these poles. So there were 8 people involved. They made a whole cheshbon. We'll see in a minute, because Kalev and Yeshua were not involved. So that brings it down to 10. One of them carried the figs that they found, and one of them carried the pomegranates. If you go to the Shukhanat Yisrael, you get an idea what a pomegranate looks like there. And maybe in those days, double that size. They're big, like a watermelon. And so there were 2 people involved in carrying that, and there were left 8 people, and they carried this cluster of grapes. But only 4 people can carry 2 poles, so there must have been 2 sets of 2 poles. That's what it says. So they have one set of poles carrying the weight, and then another set of poles beneath that carrying the weight. Okay, for 8 people carried. I was a big machlekes and all of them how exactly that went. So in fact, I think as far as I remember, there were like 5 opinions. One opinion is that they carried 2 parallel ones, and then they carried one beneath that was an X. Opinion number 2 is there were 2 X's. In other words, there were on one pole like this and one pole like this, and then it was beneath that on one pole like this, and on top of that they had a cluster of grapes. So the 4 people on the bottom were holding up the 4 people's poles on top, which were holding up the grapes. That's how heavy it was. So they're all carrying the same grapes. The third picture that you see right here, there was just a box. Then there was another one here where it's 2 poles, and at the end of each pole they had another set of poles at the end of poles, so they were able to carry these 2 poles. There were only 2 poles carrying the grapes, but the other extra 2 poles were to allow all these extra people to carry. Another opinion is that, and I'm not sure if I remember correctly why this is, one pole, they were carrying, one guy was carrying on the end, on this side, on the east side, and then there were 3 people carrying on this side. They added the other pole on the end of each one of these poles, and 3 people carrying here. I don't remember.
The grapes make sense, right? Because it goes narrow, so it would be less weight on it.
Could be, okay, could be, that's why, yeah. Could very well be. If it went that way, that shape like a triangle, could well be. So that's the different opinions that we have. Okay, it continues here. And I'm going to give the cheshbon. So that's 8. Echad Nosrim guy carried a pomegranate. Echad Nosrim guy carried a fig. Yeshua Kalev was a klum. Yeshua Kalev carried nothing. Oribai Sema, the question is, Yeshua Kalev was a klum. They didn't carry anything. Well, why didn't they carry? Either Mishum the Chashivi, there were 2 chashiv. Yeshua was like Moshe Talmud, and Kalev was was part of the mishpacha. His brother-in-law was Aaron and Moshe, and or so Oribai say 8. They want to be involved in the 8 at all. One of them said the David Abihuda to Machlekes Amoraim how to understand the Machlekes Tanoi. One of them said Chaniyasan Avru. That according to Rabbi Yehuda, they literally crossed the Yam, 12 mil by 12 mil. And the Rabbi Shimon, they walked in single file, and therefore you needed more time. Those according to Rabbi Yehuda, they walked only 12 mil if you need 12 mil of water, because they walked as quickly as the water was piling up. And according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, they were crossing single file, so 12 mil of water is not going to help. So they had to go up to 300 mil. Face makes all these cheshbonos how exactly that works. That one says Beimar Kachanios. Everyone agreed they walked 12. They went 12 mil by 12 mil. They're actually arguing who walks quicker, unless the Yarden does not have rapids and it's very, very slow, especially when it's only 50 amas wide, which means there's very little water, and therefore the flow is very slow. And maybe that was part of the nest. Okay, now we're talking about the Yisrael. We're all in the Kol and the now that you raised Kol of Yeshua, we're going to talk about the Meraglim. Shlach l'cha anoshim. David said to Moshe, "Send for yourself people." What is Lakish? Lakish says, "Shlach l'cha midaitach." Send from your own opinion. The other is a boy with the Eibishter. Interesting expression. Say the Eibishter Adam's. Generally, if I thought it was a bad thing, but I then go ahead and commission it, no. So the Eibishter tell Moshe, "It's your decision. I don't think it's a good idea. They should have enough trust and faith in me, but it's your decision." And this is what it says by Yitzhak the Einayadov. Moshe Rabbeinu says when he recaps what actually happened, he says, "I made that decision." In fact, the brutal Kleyaka there, the Kleyaka says in Parsha Shlach that what was Hashem's taina to Moshe Rabbeinu? Why did you send men? You should have sent women. Shlach anoshim. You want anoshim men? That's your decision. Women have much more emunah in what I say, and if the women will go, they'll come back with favorable reports, and they'll inspire everybody else. If you dafka want men, okay, you'll get your what you deserve. That's for the Kli Yakar ones. Imagine how revolutionary that was 400 years ago when he said this. 350 years ago. Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says, I found favor in my eyes, not now as the Eibishter. Moshe Rabbeinu did this thinking, as actually said, he's hoping, as Moshe say, that when the Edens see that Moshe Rabbeinu is acquiescing to their desires, they'll say, we don't need him, but we trust you. A lot of times they say, you want me to check it for you? And then the fact that he says he's prepared to check it for you, you say, I trust you. He was hoping the Eden would say that. Anyhow, it says the Yachpru on us. Moshe Rabbeinu uses two different words in Shlach. It's the Yasudu. In Devarim, it's the Yachpru that they should go and scout out the land. So why do you Yachpru? Because they already deliberately set out to shame Yisrael. We find the expression of the Levana was embarrassed and the son was embarrassed, and this all has to do with how Chassidus explains. It's clear that the Meraglim, and the contradiction of Rashi, where on the one hand Rashi says Anoshim Psheiru Hayu, they're all kosher at that time, and then later on where it says, and right here it says that the Chila went with intention not to be sure that they're not to go. Why would they go? So in the Niglas Forum it says because they were scared they're going to lose their position as a Nasi. All the rich people are scared maybe Mashiach will come. Who should also be reached when Mashiach comes? Who knows what's going to happen with the lead or the great rabbis? When Mashiach comes, everybody comes back. I will no longer be a great rabbi. Chassidus explains, Faket, they were tzaddikim, like Rashi says. But because they were tzaddikim, they felt that to live a life, the idyllic life is nirvana in the midbar, because they were sitting in the mon and the bear and trade all day. No distractions. So nothing competing with traders. So from the Chaya, why would you give all that up to go? Like as the Gemara in Bracha says, you're so busy involved. So they went with the best intentions not to go. They were punished because that's not why they should create a world that we should live in Gan Eden. Following the names of the Nisim at that time. We have a tradition of saying from our ancestors that every name actually has meaning to it. Also, we don't know one of them. We had a mayor, Dodish Bishma, the mayor of Shas. We had a mayor always used to dash in people's names and glean something from them. In fact, we had a whole story in the Gemara where they stayed in some hotel, and a mayor decided not to trust the hotel owner with the money because the name sounded suspicious. But the other two Tanaim gave the money, and then he denied that he ever had it. He said, "Mayor, if you knew, why didn't you tell us?" He said, "I didn't know, but I dash in names." As Chassidus and Shayich Amun explained, the name of a person is the medium that the Eibush uses to create us, and therefore that's why we say a person has nevius, because the name is already there. The moment you're created, you already have a name. Because how does all of this high madrigas end up and contract itself to be able to fit in, to conform to a human body? That is through the tzimtzumim of the name and the evolution of the different letters. So in that case, people have nevius because they have to ascertain what the name is. So here we're going to dash from one of the names. You only know one of the names. Story ben Michal. What are the names are? One of the name was Sasu ben Michal, and that we heard, which means Sasu Magic Baruch. He wanted to contradict Hashem's activities, and the Chol Sasu Atzimach. He made the Eibush Kayachol as if the Eibush is impoverished. The Eibush is too weak. Kayachol, that the Eibush cannot bring us into Israel. to bring you to that Yisrael. Even though we don't know, we'll guess. Nachtiv and Vavsi. Naphtali's leader was Nachtiv and Vavsi. Shehech b'dvar Baruch Hu. He concealed the words of Avish, who said, "Go into the soil, I'll take care of you." He jumped over, he skipped over it because he's saying, we can't rely on that. Ya'ala ben Negev, you have a Chevron, and went to Chevron. They all 12 of them. Why is it singular? Omar Rabba, Melamed, Shapidish, Kolev, Matzas, Maragim. Kolev separated himself from the advice of the Maragim. No, they had a strategy in place from the beginning. The whole trying to keep it others. He went and davened to keep it others. Now, this is a very important Gemara because this Gemara is the basis of a very big machlekes. As follows: Omal and Avoisai, Bakshu alay rachmi, daven for me. He said, Avram Yisrael, okay, he went to the Marach. Please daven by half, should not so much as Maragim. Now, before she asked and all that, here the way Chassidus explains, he wasn't trying to get out of it. The Maragim were doing an Aveda. They thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were doing a mitzvah. They thought they were doing the right thing to stay in the mitzvah, to learn with Moshe Rabbeinu and continue that way. Why go to Yisrael? So therefore, he davened. I don't want to be influenced because there is a svara to this merit to what they're saying. I don't want to be influenced, but I want to remember the kavanah. What the tachlis of kavanah. I don't want to be like another vaviyu that ended up, in Kodesh Kodashim, the age zara. Now, what's the big machlekes? The Maril says you're not allowed to go to a kivrei tzadikim and daven to tzadikim. And what we do is you go to kivrei tzadikim and you daven to the Eibishter, like Kolev went to here, and you daven to the Eibishter, but since you're in a Makom Kaddish, your tefillos might go to higher places. Brought down in the Bach and the Shachi Kufayin test in Yeridea, which is actually very difficult to understand because it says clearly that's not what he did. He said he's talking to the Mason. Now, what Maril says is, you're not allowed to talk to the Mason because that's Doide Shalom Mason. You're not allowed to talk to the Mason. Says right here. What did Kolev do? Omer and Avoisai. He's not talking to the Eibishter. He's talking to Avram Yisrael Yaakov and sorry Rivka and Leah. Avoisai Bakshu Olay Rachmish. He's talking to them. The Mogan we had a Gemara Tainis the Tez Zayin and Aleph. During a Tainis you go to a Beis HaKvaros, and the Gemara gives two reasons why. One reason is you should feel humble. You see all these dead, that you're really not worth. You don't deserve any. You don't have any more merits than the dead. And in that case, you can even go to Goyim of course. In fact, and some say better go to Goyim Kodesh. The Ritva writes, I think the censor took it out and put it back in. Better to go to Goyim Kodesh because the Goyim are all dead. Yidden in the Kodesh they're still alive. And talks about everybody. All Yidden are still alive in their cave. So if you want to feel like you're really dead, you got to go to Goyim Kodesh. Going for whatever reason they don't like that. The other pshat thing there is you're davening to the Mason and they should daven to the Eibishter on your behalf. So the pshat is, and the long Minchas Elazar, which I was just looking up to remind myself, I read there it is. But the bottom line is that to go in, we say in a man Lashon, there's a big machlekes and in slichas you say machnisa harachmim. Are you talking to malachim? You're talking to something else. That's like also like that. So there's in the manna lush when you go to the oil, the manna lush, the lush there itself is you're talking to not davening to the Eibishter and only saying the schus of tzaddikim here do this. You're also davening to tzaddikim that they should be mispal. When is Doide Shalom Mason? If you're davening to the Mason saying you make it happen, that's Doide Shalom Mason. Michlaza says Doide Shalom Mason. That's not what Michlaza says. He says Doide Shalom Mason is. He brings a Gemara that you fast and you move into a Beis HaKvaros and you daven that you should have the koyach of tumah that these Mason have transferred to me. That's called Doidish El HaMason. But if you're davening and so on, and he brings a whole list of Gemaras. But then the modern zach about the Maril is he uses this Gemara when the Gemara clearly says Amar Avoisa, and he uses Gemara to say don't daven to the Mason, daven to the Eibishter. That's not what it says. Anyway, Yeshua, Kabish Moshe Rach, Yeshua, Moshe Rei, David and Ach, never said, Make Moshe Sheben and Yeshua. Call Yeshiach, Matzas Marag, they should help you. Whatever reason, the Mephoshim talk about in the Torah why Moshe Rabbeinu already knew there was an issue and he only tried to save Yeshua. Why didn't he help out Kolev? Why didn't he try to help everybody else? So the Hayin of Siv it says, the Avdi Kolev, the Pashtus based on what Chassidus says is Yeshua was a Talmud of Moshe. Who would be more vulnerable? Who would be more interested that Moshe Rabbeinu should continue and they should continue that life? No one more than Yeshua. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu decided to step in for Yeshua, but he's susceptible, to their tightness. Kolev, he believed, would be strong enough to stand on his own 2 feet. It's Yeshua that he's worried about. Anyway, Stephen says, "Avdi Kolev, he had his own spirit." It says over there further that when they went there to Israel, they found the following people: Sham, Achiman, and Shai Vesalmai. Yelidi Anak. These were the giants. What kind of name do they? Achiman Miyumish Bachi, the right hand, he was the strongest of the brothers. When he walked, it was so big that when he walked, he made pits, holes everywhere in the ground. Actually doesn't know exactly the source of the word Shesha. Then he brings Rashi, an interesting speculation. You don't normally have this, but Rashi makes his own shot. He says maybe it means marble, that his feet were like marble. Every time he walked, he crushed the ground. He was so tall. Sorry, that he made furrows in the ground. Also, again, he walked, he made holes in the ground. He built down and Talmai Bona Talmud, he built Talmud. So tall that the sun looked like it was surrounding their neck. The Chevron was built 7 years. My name is when he was built. Elam was built. What? That Efshar Adam Bain Lebais of like cotton Kain like what he built Chevron 7 years before he built the Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was an older son than Canaan. Why would Chum build with him? It says Chum Kush Mitzrayim. Hebron was 7 times greater than Zion. There's not more rocky surface, it's all mountainous and hilly and everything else. More than Hebron. In fact, that's why we should have covered it. In fact, that's why it was selected to be a city of Kavodim, because that's what it was. The best land for grazing, the best land just in the best soil in Mitzrayim. It was so fertile. Was so it says yes, Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim generally was considered a very fertile country, right? Amongst all the lands, it's nothing better than Mitzrayim. And within Mitzrayim itself, Tzayim was the most fertile. So it says, where did the ministers meet? Where did the officers meet? In Tzayim. Nevertheless, Hebron is 7 times greater than Tzayim, and is, it says in the passage right here, Meshiva means 7 times greater. The Hebron Hebron was made out of stone, but see it says, at the end of 40 years, and Absalom wanted to become king, so he told Melech, the whole mice we learned before, Ray Nazir. And he was, I'm going to Hebron, I'm going to Hebron to keep my promise. Which promise? To be a Nazir and to bring Kabbanis. The best sheep in Eretz Yisrael were raised in Hebron. Obviously, they had plenty of grass there, and they had plenty of pasture. The Tanya, Elim and Moab, to buy rams, the best place is Moab, but Mikvasim, sheep is Hebron, like New Zealand. So the Gemara, so it sounds like for Keret, Hebron was, was great for pasture. I did a Pisha Ada of the Raya. Interesting. So because they were full of rocks, only grass grew there. They didn't have anything else growing there. And therefore there was plenty of wild grass growing. So there's plenty of grass to graze. And there the animals became very fat. They came back from spying on the land. They went and they came. We equate. They're going, their exodus to the incoming. Might be a bit when they came back, they all came back with these terrible, strategies. They went also with terrible strategies. And we explain this. So it's clear here they went with the evil designs. And Yerachi says, they said, and they start telling over all the stories. We came to the land, and there's a land flowing milk and honey. However, but it's the but that's always a problem. He said, however, they're very strong. Any lashon hara, if you don't have a little bit of truth, a grain of truth in the beginning, nobody believes you. Because he started praising the land, they said, okay, they're saying the truth. But and that kills them. They asked Moshe, and Kol silenced all the people to Moshe. Amar Abba said, you know what he did? He convinced them with words. What do you mean? First Yeshua got up to speak, he started to speak. The people said, we want to hear you. Then this guy with the cut off head wants to talk. In other words, that's the first already say. What it means is there's a chance over here that Yeshua had no children. So in other words, as if nobody's going to lead after you die. So they call him the cut off head. Because once he passed away, his Maluch, his dynasty ends with him. What are you going to have to say? In other words, we know you're loyal to Moshe Rabbeinu. So, we have nothing to hear from you. So, Omar, so Kol said to himself, if I start talking, they'll say things to me and they'll shut me up. Omar says to them, you think that's all he did? You know what else he did? As soon as they heard that tone, that expression, they thought, Salva wants to now denigrate Moshe Rabbeinu. So they quieted, they all silenced, they all didn't heard. You know what else he did? all these wonderful things. The Chilana Saman, he fed us the man. Im Yomer, if he would tell us, Asu Sumas Valulakia, make ladders and go up to the heaven, like Nishmal, I won't be listening to him. So therefore, let's hear what he has to say. If you continue tomorrow, the story of the Mirage.